Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton. Every week, bringing you a recognized business communication expert whose tips and strategies and advice will help you in all of your business endeavors. Today, I'm delighted to welcome again Deborah Boswell, based in Birmingham, Alabama. And this is the way she identifies herself on her LinkedIn profile. I am a certified and licensed speech language pathologist who serves as coach and consultant to clients in the corporate world who want to become more credible and powerful communicators. I also speak to groups and associations about a variety of corporate communication issues. And one great point to mention, I have here with me Deborah's latest book, Become a Confident Business Communicator. I had the privilege of reviewing this on Amazon, as others did. I gave it a 5-star review. And as we discuss this book today, you'll understand why it got 5-star reviews. And I'm sure you will want to order it. And I'm sure Deborah will tell us how. Deborah Boswell, speech pathologist. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Delighted to have you with us today.
Great. It's great to be here.
Deborah, when we think about the voice, our voice is one of our most treasured gifts, which so often we probably take for granted. Mm-hmm. And I've sometimes said, and I don't know if you've ever used the phrase, but I think of our voice as our audible signature. That's what it really is. Because if you, Deborah, or I, were to call somebody that we hadn't talked to in 15 or 20 years, mm-hmm. probably even before we got through our identifying ourselves, they would say, oh, I knew who you were. I knew who you were because of your voice. Our voice is very, very important to us personally. It's very important professionally. And any one of us who's ever gotten a slight cold or a case of laryngitis and you use your voice for just a little while, it frightens you because it's so central to all we do. And with that in mind, in your book, you talk to us about some of the tips for preserving this great treasure, our voice. Tell us about that, please.
Okay, absolutely. You know, I want to piggyback off something you just said. You talked about people will recognize you by your voice. Also, I found that people will recognize when you don't sound like yourself. Your voice is your signature. It's like your fingerprint, and you can even not be yourself just by the sound of your voice. People might comment, you sound down, you sound tired, you sound frustrated. So the voice is a very, very personal aspect of our personality and who we are. So we need to take care of it. The best way to take care of your voice, and I've learned this especially being a speech pathologist, drinking water. Obviously, when we drink water, we're not hydrating our vocal cords, because if the water went into our larynx, we would be aspirating, coughing and choking, and that's dangerous. So people say, why is water important for my voice? Because you want a vocal tract that is moist, that is lubricated, so to speak, for a good, strong speaking voice. And so you feel good as well. Being when your body's well hydrated, you feel better. You also want to avoid a lot of loud talking, strained talking. I have had clients in the past who it turns out they've had vocal nodules but didn't know it, and they're trying to push their voice out, and it creates strain in the laryngeal area and can cause pathology such as nodules. So you get nodules from overuse or misuse, and then they're maintained by continuing to push through that voice. Talking in noisy environments is another activity you want to modify or minimize as much as possible. If you do have to work in a noisy environment, moving closer to others, maybe even considering amplification for your voice, that might be an option, so that you don't have to push so hard to get your voice out. Giving your voice a chance to rest each day. Your larynx is where your vocal cords are housed. And in this world of talking being valued, I think we've talked about this before, but listening is undervalued and being able to talk people to death is valued. You need to find time to give your larynx a rest. So to stop talking, to have some quiet time. Obviously, if you're a smoker, smoking is detrimental to the sound of the voice, creates a hoarse, harsh sounding voice. And a lot of people don't realize it, but over imbibing in alcohol can also cause a thickening of the vocal cords, and your voice just doesn't sound like it normally does. So it's a mechanism to protect, to take care of. And we don't think about that very frequently.
It's interesting to me that you and I are talking about this during football season, when people go to games and they yell for 3 hours at the top of their lungs. And
yes.
And the next day, I guess many of them are hoarse, and I hope if it's a Saturday game, I hope by Monday morning they've got their voice back.
That's right.
Yeah, or maybe at a concert, a rock concert or something, you're yelling a lot. In all of those situations, it's good for us to keep in mind that not only can there be some damage that day, which you can feel the next day, but there could definitely be long-range damage, right?
That's right. And it could exacerbate issues that are already present in your larynx when you have an extended period of time of abuse. And we call that vocal abuse, screaming, yelling. I know as a speaker years ago, I have 3 boys, and I would go to their sporting events, and I have a very low threshold for vocal damage. That might be from years of being a cheerleader in high school, but I learned I could not yell at the boys' football games, baseball, whatever the sport was. I learned to just pump my hands in the air, but I couldn't yell because it would impact my voice for speaking the next week. It's definitely something that's serious and that needs to be given some thought if you use your voice in your profession.
One of the things, and most of us do in some way or another.
That's
we don't
right.
have to be professional speakers, actors,
No.
or singers. If you're in sales, you're in management, you're in any kind of leadership position, you are using your voice professionally.
That's right.
I finally decided years ago that when I go to a football game and there are 90,000 people there, that none of the fans and absolutely none of the players will know it if I don't yell.
That's right. That's right. You can show your enthusiasm and support other ways.
That's right. Deborah, in your book, in fact, the title talks about being a confident business communicator. In your book, I was very amused and interested by your story about a time when you went to a conference. You were a speaker. Now, later on, you have become a sought-after speaker at conventions and conferences, and certainly even at your own professional conferences. But tell us about what were some of the physical symptoms you felt in that terribly embarrassing situation when I read that you vowed you'd never put yourself in position for that again. What were the feelings you had?
Oh, absolutely. Total fear. And it was my senior year in college. I was introducing a speaker. I was the president of our student organization. And I will never forget that ever, because I don't ever want to feel that degree of fear again. But it was definitely my body, a physiological reaction to being terrified. And I recall a quivery voice. And I thought, I sound like I have some kind of neurological disorder, blurry vision, heart pounding so loudly that it felt like my eardrum was going to rupture. That's a true. When I ask audiences how many of you have felt that kind of fear before, where you hear your heart beating in your eardrum, and usually at least 50% of the hands go up. And I will tell you that is one of the worst types of fear, especially when you have to speak in the midst of all of that. My mouth was quite dry. And at that point, I realized I just want to get off this stage. And I read from my notes. I didn't make an introduction. I basically read my speech that I had typed up on the old Corona typewriter. This was back in the 80s. Yeah, it was terrifying. And I thought, I don't ever want to do that again. I never want to be in that position, so I'll do all I can to avoid it.
Which you didn't.
I did not.
Well, there are two things I want to mention here. One is the symptoms that you mentioned. I think that would be a comfort to the people who are watching us, are listening to us on podcast. It's a comfort because all of a sudden they recognize they are not some odd creature, that even those who have become widely recognized experts in presentation skills, they may have started at that level of extreme fear. That's one point that's very important. And then the second point I want to bring out is the logical question is, how did you move from that initial insecurity, fear, anxiety, how the heck can I get out of here attitude? How can you move from that to eventually not only seeking and welcoming opportunities to speak, but enjoying them? How do you do
Right. It took years, to be quite honest, but I'll tell you what forced me to realize I need to be able to speak. I cannot be crippled by this fear was when I started my private practice in speech pathology. So it was a therapeutic practice years and years ago. And I was being asked to speak at Kiwanis, Sertoma. That was a club, various clubs around the city. And even some public schools were asking me to come in and speak. And I did not want to do it. And I realized this is one way to promote my business, and I have to learn how to speak to an audience. First step was to find someone to help me. I actually found a company in New York City. Of all the places, I had to pick New York City. But I went for a 3-day-long workshop and developed a measure of confidence at that point. Understood the preparation for a presentation, how to stand, how to deliver that message physically. And once I returned, I will not say that I was totally confident, but what I knew is I must start saying yes. Many times we want to pass it off. Oh, why don't you ask Joe? He knows more about this. I'm not really in the place to address this topic, but he would do a great job. We always want to push it off to someone else. I started saying yes, and I made myself look for more opportunities. And the more that I spoke, the more confidence I developed. And I will say this, I don't think you ever lose some minute degree of fear, or let's just say nervousness. And I do believe if you lose that, you may not care as much as you used to. I tell my clients, if you have a degree of nervousness, that's a good thing. See it as a red flag that this matters to me. This is important, which also makes you prepare, makes you be at your best. If you aren't nervous, you may be taking it for granted, and you might have become boring. It may be that you don't care about your topic, and your audience will pick up on that.
I agree with that fully. And that's why I wrote a small book, which I'm not plugging, but I'm just mentioning why I chose the title. And the title of the book is 25 Ways to Control Your Stage Fright. There's so many times you'll go to the internet and you'll see somebody have a course or a book about getting rid of your stage fright. You and I know that in many ways, at a certain level, it's an asset because you're geared up for the occasion. As you say, it drives you to prepare. If you're frightened about how well you're going to do, that's going to make you prepare more diligently. And when you get up to speak, if you've got a ho-hum attitude, you're going to have people sleeping and texting and leaving the room. Absolutely. Because what the speaker himself or herself feels is what the audience is going to feel. Boy, that 3-day workshop you went to was almost what we'd call a baptism by fire. I mean, that is intense.
Yeah, it was. It was very intense, and it was limited to 10 people from around the United States. 10 leaders. They were all owners of businesses or leaders in a company. Yeah, it was intensive.
Deborah, in your book, you mentioned something and spend a little time on it, which many people in business communication overlook. And that is the value of small talk. You know, sometimes people will say, well, don't bother me with small talk. Let's get to the facts. That is a mistaken approach. Give us your opinion about why small talk is important in our professional life and how we can improve our skills.
Absolutely. Yes. I have a blog I had written once called Making a Big Deal Out of Small Talk. Probably 50% of the coaching I do is with technical professionals who many times just want to dive into the details, and they feel like small talk is a waste of time. And many times intuitive thinking, technical types feel like small talk is a waste of time, and they're not comfortable with it. They're not comfortable themselves with making small talk because they tell me they don't know what to say. Small talk is a warm-up period to the bigger conversation. When you say, we have beautiful weather, this is a nice day, isn't it? It's not a waste of time. It's the other person knows this is small talk. This is a way of breaking the ice, so to speak, so that we build trust, we build a little bit of rapport before we get into the meat of our conversation. So small talk is valuable in building relationships, building rapport that's needed before diving into deeper conversations. It's an important skill to learn. And I believe the key to small talk is when you ask questions, be ready to listen. Jump into what they're saying so that you know what you'll naturally follow it up with other comments. You don't have to struggle with, I don't know what to say, if you truly listen when you ask others open-ended questions.
Excellent advice. We have time for one more question. You talked earlier in our conversation today about the value of listening skills. You and I both are very keen on listening skills. The passage I think I liked most in your book was where you talked about having the movie mindset, which can help us with our listening. Describe that, please.
Yes. And this term, it was actually taken from a fellow speech pathologist, Rebecca Schaefer, who came up with this idea of when we are engaged in conversation with others, we've maybe asked a question, how do we motivate ourselves to listen, to truly be fully present and listen? And she likens it to what we do when we go into a movie, into a theater. You know, a lot of people are watching movies at home, but even at home, you sit down, you're focused, you're engaged. You go into the theater, you may even eat popcorn and it's dropping on the floor when maybe any other event you would be concerned about that. But because your focus is on this event that's happening in front of you, you don't even pay attention to that fact. Many times in a movie, I'll see people need to run to the restroom because they've had too much soda and they will wait until the last minute. I know I've done that because I don't want to miss the movie. And then when I do leave for just a minute, I don't mosey out of the theater. I hurry because I want to make sure I come back to get back into that movie. And what I find especially intriguing is at the end of the movie, many times, and I tell audiences, if you've never felt this, I feel sorry for you, but the movie can end, the trailers, the movie credits start to roll, the music is coming on, the lights are starting to come back up. And if you've ever had that moment when you think, wait a minute, what time is it? Where did I park the car? What's next? What has just happened is you've been in that movie mindset. You've been fully engaged so much that you don't even know what's next in your life.
And as you say in the book, that's how we ought to approach every individual conversation.
That's exactly right.
Be that involved, be that eager, be that focused, and have everything else out of your way. And another thing I was thinking as you were describing the end of the movie, I was thinking also sometimes the audience just continues to sit there. The movie I remember that the most on was when I watched Titanic. And the movie's over and Celine Dion is singing, and it's almost a mystical experience. And people just hardly wanted to leave.
That's right. They wanted to continue that experience, didn't they? I haven't thought about that.
Yes. Right? And I don't want to leave this interview, but we're going to have to. So,
well, that's true. That's exactly right.
Time catches up with us. So, Deborah, I know many people who are listening would love to get your contact information. And also, when you're giving us your contact information, tell us how to order your wonderful book.
Thank you so much. Yes, Bill. To contact me, is my name, Deborah, DeBorah, at DeborahBoswell.com. And the book can be ordered through Amazon or on my website at DeborahBoswell.com.
Thank you so much. Deborah, it's been fabulous to be with you. And since you've given your contact information, I will share mine. the Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is biz, B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com. Thanks very much for being with us. Thank you, Deborah. Any closing comments?
Thank you, Bill. No, this has been wonderful, and I encourage everyone out there to become the best, most confident, credible communicator that they can become, and enjoy that opportunity to share with others.
Thank you, Deborah. And thanks again to everyone who's been with us. Be with us again next week for another stimulating conversation that will help you with your business communication. I'm your host, Bill Lampton.